Genius Brain listeners, Genius Brain is brought to you and sponsored by BetterHelp with me, David. So, listen, when you spend all of your time giving, sometimes you can feel a little stretched thin and burned out. Well, guess what? Therapy can give you the tools to find it's just a better balance in your life so you can keep supporting others without leaving yourself behind. And listen, I've benefited from therapy my whole life. I've been taking therapy. I've talked about it openly for a very long time now. So, why not give it a try? BetterHelp can be that thing for you. If you're thinking of starting therapy, do it with BetterHelp. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/genius today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/genius. Along here, why does he have to follow these rules?
Mm-hmm.
And why is that a catalyst for the world ending? He doesn't belong here. He's an anomaly. Maybe he could do what he wants and create his destiny because you're right. He's not supposed to be Spider-Man.
Right.
So maybe in this reality, which is a reality that's not supposed to exist,
he's Spider-Man anyway.
Yeah.
Why not have his...
In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Genius Brain Podcast. I did a podcast all by myself, but now I'm here with my reoccurring co-host, Ed Park.
Hey, what's up?
We are going to get straight into this. I know sometimes we kind of get distracted, but probably one of the best Marvel films I've seen in my fucking life.
Yeah.
It was Spider-Man across
the Spider-Verse.
Across the Spider-Verse, right? Yeah. Number one, even before this film came out, I already had high expectations for it because the first one was so fucking amazing.
Yes.
I didn't realize how good this film was going to be. Mm-hmm. There are so many things that we could break down individually. We can go through the film. And there's so many thoughts that I have. I actually don't know how to organize it, right?
That's all right. I think it would be okay to just throw it all out there and just piece it all together as we go.
Okay. I mean, I'm just going to talk about a few things, right? So if you guys haven't watched this film, spoiler alert, you should fucking watch it. So go watch it first and then listen to this podcast after. One of the things that I think that they actually changed a lot.
Yeah.
And they improved a lot in places that I didn't think needed improvement, which threw me off. For one thing, like right when I noticed off the jump is what's it called? How detailed they were in the scenes in terms of how emotive, like when the emotions came out, how they changed the background in the scenes for what was happening so you could focus on the characters. That shit off jump, I was like, genius. That's so fucking genius.
Smart, yeah.
It was so good. When it started off in the beginning and she was talking to her father, right? And they're in the bedroom. You kind of see all these bright colors, but the bright colors in the back are all muted. All the furniture is muted. The way that it's drawn, how it's detailed, it's all muted. And the people that are focused on, it's just the two characters.
Right. Her father is this warm, like orange glowing color. And everywhere she goes and walks, she's this blue.
Yes.
She's got the blues. Like it's so it's art, man. It's fucking art. Yeah. Like
when I was looking at this, and I think the reason why I wanted to watch this 2 times was because I kept processing everything that I was watching in real time.
Yeah.
So there are definitely moments that I missed in the film, right? Because I just kept thinking, when I first saw that, I was like, this is something that actual film would not be able to replicate.
Yeah.
This is the closest that we're going to get to watching a comic book come to life.
Yes. Yes, that's the aesthetic. That's why like you're looking at it like it's flat, right? But it's got a depth to it, but it's flat because they from the first film too, you could see like they wanted to make it look like you're looking at comic book pages, which is why when you saw people moving in fast motion, the motion blur was the CMYK print splitting.
Yeah.
You know when you see a comic book and the color gets misprint? Like, yeah, like, oh, fuck, it's so smart. And then when it's showing shading, it's showing the rasterization dots, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, this aesthetic, right? And then you come to this film. And when the way they build their worlds, it's like every universe has its own aesthetic.
Yes.
And that's where they ramped that up. And they actually made the universes have their own characteristics in them. Yeah. It's so fucking great.
And I thought to myself when I was watching this, like, I didn't think that there was going to be a film. I don't know how people might feel about this, especially because I should be, my Asian American side wants to say Everything Everywhere All at Once was the best multiverse film ever. Mm-hmm. And this thing comes sliding in.
Yes.
And I was like, yo.
But I was going to say the same thing, bro. I was going to say the same thing. The night I saw it, Friday night, over at midnight, I didn't sleep till like 6:45 a.m. And I wrote down my thoughts. And the beginning of my paragraph is, this reminds me of Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah.
And I started from there. And I can expound on that. Like, we have all the time in the world to expound on that. But for me, it's like, this is a generationally defining film, which is a great way to start the early years of the 2020s, right? Like, we had Parasite and we had Everything Everywhere All at Once. And then I'm not saying these because I'm trying to say Asian movies, no, but because of how they're defining this decade, how it's defining a generation, how it's defining our culture today, not just because it's Asian shit, because I'm talking about this movie too is such a generation defining like movie about like how we are responding to what we were taught by the boomers and the establishment and how things are supposed to be.
Yeah.
And the fucking story we want to write for ourselves, which is the major theme of this movie. And the reason why you're feeling that way with Everything Everywhere is because these are both classified as meta modern movies. They are meta narratives because, the original like boomer movies, like from the beginning of its conception, like, Thomas Edison invented the film camera.
Oh, for reals?
Yeah. The film industry was in New Jersey, dude. Like, it was in the East Coast, like New York and that shit. But you know what? Because he had all this proprietary use of all these cameras and shit, he made these rules, like about what he thought was moral and all this shit. So your movies have to do this. It's just propaganda, right? But and then so that's like how film started, and before it moved to Hollywood to leave those fucking Edison rules, But then the story they were telling and the way films were originally used is still propaganda. Like, hey, this is the world we live in. This is what we do. This is what we think of bad guys. This is what we do to bad guys, right? This is how to follow the rules. This is how to grow up and obey, all these things, right? Then we get postmodern. You might classify it like it started with late boomers with like, I'm going to say like the 70s films because of Richard Nixon's whole Watergate scandal just opened the minds of Americans. Like, you can't trust the government, like they're lying to us. They're doing all the secret shit. What? All this stuff. I mean, the assassination of JFK, it built this cynicism into America in the 70s, and it's reflected in those movies with Taxi Driver and The Godfather, the bad guys, movies about bad guys winning.
Yeah.
Then you get to Gen X postmodern movies. Then you got people like Quentin Tarantino fumbling all of these scenes, totally nonlinear movie, yet it's just like a coherent story. So not only are they fucking with the narrative, but they're fucking with the format of telling a story. You got someone like Christopher Nolan telling a whole entire movie fucking backwards, and it makes sense when you see you see the beginning of the movie at the end. They're expressing and changing the way film is said, right? But look at us millennials and how we like what are we gonna create and such, right? What do we do? The boomers and Gen X, they created everything. They created all the franchises. They created all the IP, and everything, like the work that comes to the people who make it up to the top. What's their job? Take care of this IP. Right? And so like I feel like our generations and this decades and Gen Z included coming into this decade and expressing ourselves is us being told what to do by the establishment, but what we're going to do, with our own story. We know that that's what you're telling us to do, but we have our own story to tell. And that is that's the theme of like Everything Everywhere as well. Like you take in the establishment and the establishment storytelling model, and then you flip it on its head with throwing everything that was ever presented to you. Then you bring in the cynicism of the postmodernism, because that's a lot of what postmodern films were. They just kind of brought cynicism and, just kind of a dark age. But then the meta modern narrative is like how we are going to take the positive outcome while acknowledging all of the negative as well.
Yeah.
So in Everything Everywhere, at the end of it, the cynicism, they accept, like, sure, nothing matters because we could be anywhere and everywhere, but I want to be right here with you at this dirty laundromat.
Yeah.
To love you here because nothing matters anyway, right? Yeah. And so it's a way of acceptance of this messed up world and the rules that we're living under, while acknowledging, asking the boomers in the establishment to acknowledge, the plight, but us also having to manage our expectations. Because the first, Into the Spider-Verse film, what did he graffiti on the wall? No expectations.
Yeah.
The message that he's trying to cross, like Miles Morales' character is a kid with no expectations for his future.
Yeah.
And so like when it goes off, man, like the starting of the film where she's playing drums and then so it's expressing her feelings and like you're seeing this beautiful watercolor, but then you're seeing how she feels just through the art. And then what's going on? Like her father is the captain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so she tells her story. Basically, Peter Parker turns into a lizard. And he ends up dying. And her father thinks that she...
the one who killed him.
Killed Peter Parker. So he's been after her. And they end up... This is meta-narrative. They're at the Guggenheim Museum, right? And so there's this vulture from a Da Vinci universe, right? And she calls him the Renaissance man, right? And he sees this 2023 art at the Guggenheim and they start having an argument about what is art.
Yeah.
And it's like, of course they're talking about this film, right? And I think in the bigger picture, the biggest question, even in the first Into the Spider-Verse was, what is Spider-Man? Who is Spider-Man? What makes you Spider-Man, right? And they proved it's not just Peter Parker, because everybody in that film is not a Peter Parker except Peter B. Parker, the depressed divorced guy.
Yeah.
Right? And man, this film is so layered too. So they have this, argument about art, and that fact that we're talking about it makes it art. And then the Spider-Woman, Issa Rae, comes through. And what'd you think about her character from her start? Because she's cool as fuck as she comes in.
I mean, right? She kind of reminded me of honestly like a cool motherly figure, right? That she didn't have because she has her father figure there. Yeah. And like she doesn't have a woman influence. Mm-hmm. And that's her woman influence.
Automatically, will you adopt me?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And so, when you look at like the household upbringing, right? We always talk about that, the dual household where you have a mother and a father, right? And somebody's always looking for a figure to look up to. And so when she saw her and, in the previous film and obviously in the film and the way it starts, you have a young girl who's blossoming into a woman, right? Yeah. And this is what I really like too. I really feel like this film just off the jump allowed us as adults to kind of see ourselves as teenagers. And we're also kind of in this age where our friends are also parents.
Yes.
And so you see this weird dynamic that they have that's weird, but also very fucking familiar. Mm-hmm. Like we've been through her stage. Like, I want to tell you everything, but I'm scared to. I'm afraid what you're going to say. Yeah. I know what I'm doing. I have my own path. I want to still make you proud, right? But that girl also needs a motherly figure. And so when she came in, I'm like, that's her mom figure.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Everything that she wants to see in a cool fucking mom.
She comes in and then Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099 comes in. Mm-hmm. Fucking badass as shit, right? Fucking, he's got claws. He's got like this sketch characteristic on him. He's fucking cool as fuck.
Buff as shit.
He's got like also semi-vampire powers or something.
Yeah.
So are you familiar with his backstory?
No, not at all.
I wasn't either, so I had to look it up. So he is from another universe. This guy, Miguel O'Hara, he works for Alchemex. And I guess he wanted to quit his job because he found out the company was shady. And then as at the farewell party, his boss roofies him with this drug, this future drug that automatically gets him hooked and addicted to it. And because of that drug, he loses his wife and kid and his family. And so but his boss did that to him to make him continue working for his company. And so in that while working for the company, he found this serum to help with his drug addiction, which is the thing he punched in his arm. It's like the spider venom, and it makes his DNA 50% spider, I guess. And so that's what he did. He came up with the suit and all that technology and shit. So that's his backstory as a character. And then
That shit's dark as fuck.
yeah. So
He's
I mean,
Batman.
he's from the 90s.
Yeah.
So the Scarlet Spider is in this one too, right? The one with the hoodie, the blue hoodie. Classic 90s Spider-Man. But that at that time they were trying to bring like darker Spider-Man, melancholy kind of characters. But yeah, they get into a fight. They practically destroy the place. What's her name? Gwen comes to the action from a helicopter falling down, and she fucking webs up the joint. Super dope sequence. But in that mess, I mean, she saves her father's life. He catches her and he points a gun and says, "Stop right there," because he still believes that she killed Peter Parker. And so she does the thing that she's most scared to do. She reveals herself to her father, saying, "Look, why would I kill Peter?" And da 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 da. What does her father do?
You're under arrest.
Yep, you have the right to remain silent.
Miranda rights. Yeah.
Yep. And in that moment, the other spider people, Spiderwoman and Miguel O'Hara, come in. They trap up her dad and they take her with her. So Spiderwoman ends up taking Gwen under her wing. And so that's when title card comes up, and then we're back with Miles. Where does Miles come in? They kind of recap his story from the last movie, right?
Yeah, they basically talk about, where his life has been in the last year or so, or however long it's been.
He grew a little bit, right? He's 15.
He's enjoying the fame, taking selfies, has done brand deal endorsements, living
Right.
his life, as a superhero
The
star.
new Spider-Man of New York, right?
Yeah.
Well, he's in Brooklyn, though. And so, right, he's introduced along with this new character named Spot. Spot is trying to steal an ATM because he says he lost his job, and his powers is basically, have you played that game Portal?
No.
Well, it's like you get the concept,
yeah.
right? I mean, he basically creates these portals through these ink blots on his body. And that's where, Miles comes in to save this. So they fight. But in the meantime, he's late to this meeting with his parents and the guidance counselor, right? And so as they're fighting, he does not respect this guy, Spot, at all. And he calls him the villain of the week, and he gets him locked up, webbed up. And then he gets into the meeting super late. And this is a very interesting conversation that happens. Now, it's because I watched it 3 times because I was obsessed with this. I knew I had to pay attention here because she brings up a blank piece of paper and says, this is every kid's universe, right? And it's like, your son has to fit into here. Obviously a metaphor for putting kids in a box and such things. And she's like, I have no idea who your son is, right? And you got to pay attention to the meta narrative of what they're saying and who's saying this and who would say this out here in our real life. He comes in and then she says, here's your story, right? A young Black Latino immigrant with a struggling family in Brooklyn, right? And then their parents object too.
We're not struggling.
She's like, yeah, I'm from Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico's America.
Yeah.
And I'm not an immigrant. And then his dad's like, I own a floor in Brooklyn. I don't think I'm struggling, right? So, I mean, that's disrespectful, right? But then it's like this old white lady.
Like, this is the story that people want to hear.
This is what people want to see. This is what colleges want to see, right? And so she's trying to put him in a box, right? But even the parents can see that's not what they want to do, right? But that's the game, then yeah, Miles, you gotta, come along. But he's like, you're seeing like what he wants to do is go to Princeton. His mom wants to go to college in Brooklyn, right? And so he's expressing how much he wants to travel and get out there, right? While still another parental guidance figure is holding him back, in Brooklyn. And while he's expressing that he's got to get out there. But once again, the dude's Spot gets out. They end up in that same multiverse machine thing from the first movie. And then he explains like, this is where it all happened.
Yeah.
You created me and I created you. His backstory is that in their research with the machine, they brought a spider from another universe to study for those spider bites, but that got let go. And that's the spider that ended up biting Miles. And so I was looking at Into the Spider-Verse. If you noticed, there was all these hints about 42, right?
Yeah.
And it was never explained.
Yeah.
And now it's explained in this movie. Yeah, it's from a universe, Earth 42. And so in that case, that created Miles as Spider-Man. But full circle, he came back to destroy the machine. And in destroying the machine, it affected him. Like as a science experiment gone wrong. And now he's got all these holes in him. And that's what he's become. So it's like, you created me too. And Miles doesn't respect it.
Yeah.
He don't care. Right?
I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah,
like, I still don't know who you are, which is like infuriating to him. It's very dismissive.
Yeah. And he's like, you threw a bagel at me.
Yeah.
Which was like one of the, small little meme jokes that came out of the first film. And it's great that they brought it back. But it's like, he's like, hey man, I've thrown various foods at a bunch of people. He just don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And because of that, he starts getting fucking angry. He's like, I'm going to make you recognize me and understand how linked we are. But he's still a bumbling fool and he kicks himself in the ass and falls into himself in his own holes. Right. And then, so what ends up is Spider-Man has a conversation with Jeff Morales, Miles' dad. Right. And it shows how Miles can finally say the things he wants to say as his dad with a person with a mask on. And then, but at the same time as he's saying these things, he's gaining the empathy and viewpoint of his father. Right. And yeah, in that moment, like even the way New York is New York. It's a concrete jungle. But then when they started using that tarp to look like waves of an ocean, you're like, and he's got his arms spread out like this. You're like, damn, man, how is this movie they can make it fucking beautiful, man.
Yeah.
They're visually just so expressively good, man.
Yeah.
Now, what happens next?
So after they have that conversation, right, I think, and I might be jumping to this part too, but then Miles' dad's birthday?
That's right. Spot.
Not his birthday. It's him becoming
becoming captain. The Spot dude is inside himself, like his own little universe.
And he finds out that he can go into other
universes. And like, so he comes into a universe and it looks like a Art Deco old ass, Archie comic, right? And then he gets out and he goes into this little Lego universe, right? Do you hear about this on Twitter? A 14-year-old Black Canadian kid animated that entire series.
I heard he did that whole thing after school.
Yeah.
Crazy. Insane.
Have you seen his other work?
No.
So it looks like a major studio who makes Lego movies did it. Like, so they released the Across the Spider-Verse teaser, right? Years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then he recreated it with Legos, right? The directors, Phil Lord, Christopher Miller, are the writers, producers. They saw it on Twitter the next day. They were like, hey, do you want to animate an entire sequence? Because they were still in the middle of finishing it, and they added that sequence in for him. 14-year-old kid, dude.
That's dog. Kids are so talented nowadays, man.
And the technology that's accessible to them that allows them to do this shit too. Oh my God.
And you know what's amazing about that? I can't wrap my head around it.
Mm-hmm.
I barely still know how to use fucking After Effects. It's so hard for me to wrap my head around.
In my head, I was thinking, like, did they get the guys who made the Lego movie to do this? Because Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, they made the Lego movie. They made the first one.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
These guys don't miss. We'll talk about the history of their films, but yeah, like that's what I thought at first. And then I learned a 14-year-old kid did it. Like, damn.
And I actually really appreciate that from them too, because it's so easy for somebody in their position just to be like, oh, we want to add a Lego thing here. We could just do it ourselves and steal his idea. Mm-hmm. And then nobody would know for otherwise. Even the kid probably wouldn't know.
Yeah.
But instead they're like, hey, let's give this kid a chance.
That's Lord and Miller, man. They're fucking excellent with the kids' films, but they also make really great, regular adult films. I mean, not like porn, but like rated R films. But yeah, so he finds out that his holes are an access to different universes and the multiverse. And so what he's got to do is now just get more machine parts to build a little collider again, for himself.
And just do it multiple times, over and over and over.
Right. And then we see Miles trying to get a cake at a cake shop. And this is important too, like, because he's saying so much, the cake maker has to write too much on there. She says, why don't you say something shorter, right? But he comes up with a different solution. He gets 2 cakes, right? And what do the guidance counselors say before to him? You can't have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
And he's like, then I'll have more cake. Like, the idea of him coming up with his own solution is like a theme in this film. And he ends up getting to the meeting late. So in their argument, you're seeing that his parents are pissed off at him because he's always missing. And the guidance counselor was saying he's lying to you about something. And it's clear they want to know what's up. Why are you missing class? Why are your head in the air? All that shit. And he wants to say that he's Spider-Man. And then when he gets the chance and the music stops, like, he can't say it, That argument ends up with him getting grounded, getting sent to his room. And then all of a sudden, Gwen Stacy comes out through a portal. And then she explains about this secret covert ops group of spider people in different multiverses get this wrist thing. And so, she wanted to come by and say hello. But then what we really see is that she's on a mission. Like, she's surveilling Spot. But what we also see is that she's neglecting her responsibilities to go hang out with Miles.
Yeah.
And they have this fucking beautiful scene on top of that dome tower. Oh my God.
It was so fucking dope, man.
I need to get a panorama poster of that shit.
Like I really liked that cake scene specifically because it's so it's a precise portrayal of what it's like to be a misunderstood teen, right? Because from their parents' eyes, they see this kid that's not trying hard enough because they understand their kid's potential. They see how smart he is. He's basically on a route to going to an Ivy League college, though. So they see his intelligence, right?
Yeah.
And so the only perspective that they see is they see this young kid that's fucking up, that's not living up to his potential.
They're trying to tell him to stop fucking this up.
But on the other side, this kid is trying his best. He's literally trying his best. But the hard part about this that a lot of us find out as we get older is like, you really can't have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
You're trying to balance two different lives.
Yeah.
Right. And how do you do this?
Mm-hmm.
There's no honesty in this at all, which when they bring up that whole thing, your kid's lying to you, like, to me, it was a representation of like, how long can you live a dishonest life? How long can you be a dishonest person and try to balance it out? Right. And it just reminded me of being a kid. It's like, you're not trying hard enough. As a kid, you're frustrated. Like, I am trying. You just don't fucking know because it's not in the way that you see fit. So like, that was such a good representation of what it's like to be a misunderstood teenager.
Yeah. I mean, like, because I'm loving the way it's portrayed here in this movie. Because when I see teens and Gen Z in other movies, call me an ageist, man. I'm like, this fucking shithead. Yeah. Like Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, this fucking shithead.
Yeah.
But this film was just like there's fucking great empathy points because they're just not making a movie for Gen Z to cater to them. It's a real character. It's a real 15-year-old in this day and age.
And just as perspective too, what I really enjoy about this film is that they're building character through action only.
Yeah.
There hasn't been this moment in this film already. And we've already talked about a lot of, we only talked about like maybe 25% of this film at this point.
Right. We haven't gone that far yet.
Yeah. Where they're building character without him having to sit down at the edge of a building and then have a dialogue to his fucking self about how he feels, about what it's like. You don't know what it's like to be a teenager, Dad. You don't need any of that stuff.
Yeah.
If you've been a teenager, if you are a teenager, you look at that and you understand just by seeing the social dynamic between a parent and a child. Yeah. That's all that you need. And I really, really appreciated that because I understood everything without it having to be said.
Right. I mean, like in his conversation as Spider-Man to his father, his father is like, I feel like my son is just lying to me and keeping things from me. Right. And he's
Get off
like,
his ass.
Well, yeah, why would he do that? It's like, because his dad is so intimidating. Right. Which is like one important story point in God of War, Ragnarok, right? Like, Kratos in his character, he's a fucking motherfucking killer, right? And he's a monster badass or whatever, right? And then you have this kid in this game who's like telling lies and keeping things from his father. But it's like the game is also portraying like, yeah, to a kid, to an intimidating father like that, why isn't it obvious that they would keep things from you, right?
Yeah, fucking scary as shit.
And then what's the consequence when they find out you're lying? Even scarier, father, right?
I actually
so
know
you just keep up the lie.
Any reference to God of War, that specific one, I'm going to know because I watched all the cutscenes all the way through. So I watched it on my 5-hour drive back with my brother to Sacramento.
Yeah, it's such a fucking solid story too, right? Yeah. And so Miles and Gwen on that rooftop, or the dome, this beautiful thing because that gravity is just not there. Yeah, they're upside down. And, he's telling her how he wants to tell his parents that he's Spider-Man, then maybe they'll believe. Because remember, he even has that little fantasy where he tells his parents he's Spider-Man and then oh, don't worry about you lying to us. We love you anyway, right? Because that's how a kid would perceive.
Humor in this film, by the way, on point. So many fucking funny moments.
Lord and Miller, man. Lord and Miller. But Gwen says, don't do it.
My lovely genius farts. This podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp. That's right. Genius Frame with David So is sponsored by BetterHelp. And my friends, I've been with BetterHelp for quite a while now, and they have been a consistent sponsor because I have personally used BetterHelp in my life. It's super easy. It's super convenient. And if you haven't focused on your mental health this year, why not give it a go? You have nothing to lose. It's so easy to get caught up in what everyone else needs from you. And you just never take a moment to think about what you need from yourself. And that's where BetterHelp can come in. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. So all you really have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire and you'll get matched with a licensed therapist. And by the way, you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/genius today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/genius.
because she just did. She's like, it's only going to get worse. Right. And she just advises, like, just keep it to yourself. And they have that conversation about their destiny and who they're supposed to be as spider people. And then she says, in every other universe, Gwen Stacy falls for Spider-Man. And he tries to get in close. And he says, and she also says, just like with what happened with her father, in every other universe, terrible things happen because of it. Right? So it pulls back, which is like a thing that we understand about Spider-Man, about Gwen Stacy's story, right? It was a thing with nerds when the Amazing Spider-Man 2 trailer came out. Like, to all the super nerds, they already knew the ending just by watching the trailer.
Yeah.
Because there's a shot of her like, oh, right? But it's the clothes she's wearing. She's wearing the exact same clothes she wears when she dies in the comic book. And so all the super nerds were like, oh my God, Gwen Stacy's dead. Gwen Stacy's gonna die.
Yeah.
And then all the fans like, there's no way they'll kill Emma Stone, right? That's crazy. Their chemistry is way too good, right? And what happens? Like, she dies. Why? Because people who understand Spider-Man and know the story, like, knew that's canon. That's what's gonna happen, right? And so what these two young spider people are looking at their established storylines, and they're like, what can we do? Right? Can't we just do our own thing? And then, did they get interrupted? Why the hell? How does that scene even end?
Or things go beep beep.
Oh, that's right. And then we find out she wasn't paying attention. So, motherfucker accomplished his whole goal. Like, now he's shooting all over the multiverse. And so Gwen gets in trouble from Spider-Woman. I forget what her name was. I just keep calling her Spider-Woman, but
damn, I'm forgetting her. I only saw it once.
Issa Rae's character. And you start seeing her colors, right? As a mentor, right? She's like, I told you, like, I'm here for you. I'll take you under my wing. I'll teach you the ropes. But if you mess this up, that's on you. I'm not here for you. She makes it clear. Like, if you mess up, that's not on me. And so she's stressed out. She's fucking up, right? And so she's got to chase this Spot dude. And before that, actually, her parents, Miles' parents interrupt their little session.
That's right.
And then because she, quote unquote, ices his game, in their reconciliation, but she tells him to go after her. She's like, I can't be here, and we as your parents, we see you as our little boy, and it's hard to undo that. But if you're gonna go out there in the world, she's talking about college, but it's a foreshadowing of this future of this film. She's like, you have to take care of yourself, that little boy inside of you. You have to look after yourself, and you have to help yourself, like, get along with people. But if those people say you don't belong, don't let them make you feel that way, right? Then you go out and you do your own thing, right? And then he goes and he fucking follows her to Mumbai Hatton. And we go into another universe, and it is Spider-Man India, right? And when we're introduced to this new universe, I forget what the Spider-Man is called, but he's an Indian Spider-Man. And he is like, man, being Spider-Man is so easy.
Yeah.
Right? And it's kind of like, oh, like, this is before the bad stuff happens, right? He's like, oh, I don't have to work out because it makes me too big. I help out with, like, kids, and then I have tea with my aunt and all this stuff. He's like, perfect Spider-Man.
You know what I also looked at as too, that kind of cracked me up. I'm not sure if this was the purpose of it in the writing, but it's like, I thought it was like an ode to just how, like, Asian kids, like, what they normally have to deal with. This is fucking nothing. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it felt like to me.
Right.
Like the typical stuff that Indian kids Indian kids, Asian Americans, Asian kids are faced with on the daily. Like, this is a blessing, man. Like, I look at all this stuff as a blessing. You don't know what I have to go through without these powers.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't be able to juggle any of this type of shit. I have so many things that are expected out of me. This is fucking cake.
Well, what I thought though was that this was the point before the Spider-Man goes through all of this shit.
Oh, 100%.
Right. But let's see, they chase after Spot because he goes to Alchemax in that universe. And when he's trying to, Spot builds up this force field. And so Miles starts doing his electricity power, but then they're like sitting and waiting, like, what the fuck's taking you so long? And then Spider-Punk shows up, and his design is so dope because he looks like he was cut out of a magazine.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. Like, he's so flat, but he has depth.
Yeah.
It's like they cut him out of another comic book and put him in there, like piece by piece. And the other thing I want to say is how they express frame rates in here. Because when they're just doing normal life things, it's classic save money type of animation where it's 12 frames a second. But whenever they do Spider-Man shit, it turns to 24 frames per second, right? But this guy, Hobbies, Spider-Punk, because he looks like a magazine cutout, he's going at like 6 frames a second.
Yeah.
Right? So he looks like stop motion animation. So yeah, like just the style of it is so dope. So he comes in and he's super anti-establishment as well. I think they failed to get Spot, and he creates this big hole that drops the entire building onto the city, which, I mean, there's this amazing rescue sequence with the 4 of these spider people, right? But damn, if 1 million people didn't die, I don't know. But
yeah,
it looked like shit got fucked up. But in that, we start seeing Spider-Man India's little Canon event starting to happen, right? Because he's like in love with this girl whose father is the captain of the police in the city. And he's trying to save a little girl, and the building's going to fall on top of him, but he's trying to save the girl. And he's also saying, I can do both. Whether he had to choose between the girl or saving the captain, he's like, I can do both, right? Which is also kind of a thing that happened in Spider-Man 1 with Tobey Maguire, remember?
Yeah.
Green Goblin had the cable car with Mary Jane and the bunch of New Yorkers, and he did both. But in this Spider-Man, he couldn't do both. He opted to hang on to the girl of that universe, and he's trying to save the captain, but what happens is Miles goes in. Now, Gwen grabs his arm and tells him not to do it, and he's like, no, we got to save these people. And he goes down and he ends up saving the captain. And Gwen's little wristwatch thing goes off, and it says, Canon event disrupted. And now she gets another notification from the Spider Squad. They show up straight up like, you failed.
Yeah.
Like, you were supposed to make this happen. It didn't. And so now there's this huge hole in the middle of the city that's swallowing up and that they have to try to stop. And so now the rest of these spider people have to answer to Miguel O'Hara, their boss. So they end up going into the Spider-Verse, the headquarters at Nueva York in 2099. And so
for those of you out there too who don't know what a canon event is, and I'm pretty sure you've watched this, but if you haven't, a canon event is basically the catalyst that kind of onsets, the character who Spider-Man is, right?
It's canon, right?
Yeah.
Story canon.
Yeah,
right?
story canon. So
it's like Superman will always come from another planet in any iteration. He'll always be raised by some folks in Kansas. He'll always like these specific things every time he's rebooted. And so Spider-Man has all of these specific events. Now, that was the theme of the first movie, right? The first film was a love letter to origin stories, right? And every time they told a character came in, their comic book slapped on the page and they said, I'm this, and I did this, and this person died, and I went through this, and now I'm this, right? And they have this montage every single time. And Miles doesn't get that only right up until the end when his uncle Aaron dies.
Yeah.
He goes through his own little canon event, right? And so that's what we all understood. They were trying to say, hey, this is what Spider-Man is. That's what they were trying to tell us. Now, when we go into meeting Miguel O'Hara and he starts explaining what the canon event is, that's when we get all of the cameos and such. And I gotta say, every theater I went to, they didn't freak out. I had a very respectful theater every single time, like all those crazy cameos came out.
You know why I felt like that happened, especially in the theater I was in too? They couldn't process everything.
Right. That could be it too.
There was so much shit. They couldn't process everything.
Yeah.
They didn't know what the fuck was going on. Especially if you're not a hardcore Marvel fan, like the terminology you're going to get lost in, like seeing all these, like multiverse stuff is really hard to handle, right? Unless you kind of read about it or you kind of have a general idea of what the multiverse is in these Marvel films.
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like a lot of the times they were just kind of getting lost and trying to understand what the fuck is going on.
Right.
You know?
But that's the thing, like with how, you know, like past few years, I've been also in that YouTube rabbit hole of trying to understand multiverse theory and how plausible it is. And I got to say, all of these multiverse films do get it right, you know, many times, like with how they try to explain it, like the possibilities of it theoretically, you know. And so it just, that's what I mean about like, if we're talking about this now, imagine the movies 10 years from now beyond telling more multiverse stories. Crazy. Man, yeah. So they explain what a canon event is, like how every iteration of Spider-Man goes through these specific tragedies that we all understand, right? And it's like, for him, it was his Uncle Aaron, right? And then we saw the cameo with like the live action Spider-Man. We saw the video game Spider-Man. We see fucking Donald Glover as a Prowler again. And like, so yeah, all these great cameos, but then the point of it being that we all experience this and that's what makes us, right? And then he was reiterating, but there's the other thing that also happens is that the captain of the police that is a very close relation to the Spider-Man will die, and it will greatly affect the way that Spider-Man of the universe, you know, is affected, you know, or goes about his life. That's something that has to happen. And you weren't even supposed to be in that universe, and you prevented that canon event from happening. So that's why this whole is happening. And then he's like, Miles says, how do you know?
Yeah.
It's like, you fucking shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
But then, which is a viable question though, because when he says, how do you know? Because he's like, how do we know that spot did that, right? That hole in the ground. And because Miguel O'Hara tells his story, you know, about who he is and like how he lost his family due to that addiction and who he is. So he found a universe where he's murdered and dies, and he gets there at the moment of his death so he can just replace himself. And now he has his family again. That's what he wanted. That was his intention. But what happened was that universe entirely fell apart rather than him falling apart, because he, I guess, messed up all these, canon events in that universe. And so it's like, that's why we have to keep this all together and we have to enforce this to happen. Right? And then he says, you weren't supposed to be here, and you're not supposed to be Spider-Man, right? Because the spider came from another universe. It was just supposed to bite the Miles Morales of that universe. So when you see because I've seen it 3 times, there's actually, you know, spoiler alert, at the end, Miles Morales has his other half has braids, right?
Yeah. You
could see him in class studying and the spider's about to bite him and then it gets snatched up.
Mm-hmm.
But that spider, its purpose was still to bite Miles Morales.
Yeah.
And then it ended up biting Miles Morales of that universe. But Miles Morales of his universe getting bit meant that the Spider-Man in this universe died. So you just messed up the entire timeline there. You messed up the entire canon. So you're not even supposed to be Spider-Man at all. And they just kind of shut him down. They say, you don't belong here. You're not supposed to be here.
Yeah. Which was so good, because when he said that, it kind of, I didn't understand, like, okay, why the fuck would they want her but not him? Right? Mm-hmm. It's because he's not supposed to be existent.
Yes.
He fucks up the timeline in general. Like, he's the catalyst for the reason why all this shit's happening.
I think they call it a Nexus event in the Marvel stories or something, but yeah.
So he's the reason why all this shit is happening. And so I never understood why. It's like, why the fuck would they choose her over him? And like with the whole canon event thing, like when that happened, I thought canon events were very singular, right? But there are multiple things that happen, right? Within the character of Spider-Man. And so I couldn't wrap my head around why this kid is such a fucking idiot. You know?
Yeah, I was getting pissed the first time I saw it.
I was getting so fucking frustrated, right? Because the Uncle Ben dying is one of the most major parts for anybody who's not a Spider-Man fan. Is the biggest part for him that caused this change of character. If you watch the Spider-Man with Tom Holland, right? Tom Holland's character is also this clumsy, dumb teenage idiot until his canon event, which was Aunt May dying in that universe, right? It causes him to gain perspective. It's that whole Uncle Ben moment, right? Where he puts on this wisdom of what's the phrase again? With great power
comes great responsibility.
Right? And it essentially changes his perspective of who he is as a person. I can't have my cake and eat it too. I have a responsibility that I have to uphold. And there are things that are more important than what my personal wants are, right? Because I took on this responsibility. So my personal wants aren't important now, right? It's saving this world, being a superhero. And I was like, you went through your canon event. Why the fuck don't you understand this? It's still me. Me. What about me? What about me? And it was pissing me off.
But I think it was because they told him, right? And now it becomes kind of like Minority Report. You remember Minority Report with Tom Cruise? Because they told Miles, like, your dad's gonna die. You know, that kind of, and it has to happen or else your entire universe will be destroyed. And that's the thing about having his cake and eating it too. He's like, why can't I do both? Why can't I save both? And they're like, you can't. I just told you, you just can't. You'll destroy the universe. He's like, I'll figure out a way. And this is where you're like him and Tom Holland too with the No Way Home. When he was like arguing with Doctor Strange, I was like, this little Sagaji kid, like, needs to shut the fuck up, right? Yeah. But that's just my age showing and seeing this story. But then understanding that's just happens to teenagers. I'm sure so many of my friends who have teenage, kids, it's like they lie to you. They fucking deceive you.
Like, I'm not sure.
They fuck up really bad.
That's the thing too. Like, I'm being critical of this teenager being a teenager, right? Like, I'm not sure if this is true, right? But I was thinking about it when I was, at home, just kind of mulling over it. Like, why is he like this? Right?
Yeah.
Like, he had his and then I thought too, I was like, maybe his uncle dying isn't his canon event that causes the moral change in him, right? And the reason why I thought about that is this. His dad being the captain and his father at the same time is actually those two events in one. Because
Uncle Aaron wasn't his guidance.
Exactly.
Yes,
Uncle Aaron was a villain.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He actually doesn't have a moral ground to give him guidance or say the things that he did. Uncle Ben was somebody that was his moral guidance that he shunned.
Yeah.
Right? That he thought that what he was saying was stupid. Right? He ignored him. That's his father.
Yeah.
So his canon event actually wasn't Uncle Aaron. It's his dad dying.
Yes.
And that's why he keeps saying stupid shit. Right? Because he hasn't had his Uncle Ben. And that's what was fucking me up. I was like, his Uncle Ben died. His Uncle Ben died. It's like, no, it actually didn't. It's his dad.
Yeah.
He's the one that he's emotionally ignoring. He's the one that's imparting wisdom upon that he thinks is dumb. But until his father dies and he starts to realize his mortality is when he starts having that moment in the film where he goes like, I love my family.
Yeah, I gotta save my dad. So it's like maybe the fault is that they told him. And that, so, I mean, if you were told, hey, your dad's gonna die, and you had the power, the strength, the ability to
Wouldn't
save him.
him?
Yeah. Right, wouldn't you, right? And that's the problem with Man of Steel. This motherfucker watches his dad get sucked up in a hurricane. You fucking shut.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, that's the thing. So that is the metaphor that I saw with what Miguel O'Hara and all the spider people are trying to tell them, right? And this is what the spider geeks on Twitter and those right-wing, film critics and like, conservative superhero, mouthpieces on YouTube are saying. They won't call Miles Morales Spider-Man. They just call him Miles Morales. It's like a thing that they do.
Yeah.
Right. And that is expressed by all these other Spider-Men. Like, hey, you're not a Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Right. They're giving a mouthpiece to that voice on the internet by telling him you're not even supposed to be Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, they're expressing, like, this is what a Spider-Man is, right? And even his guidance counselor, once again, that blank piece of paper, like, this, what are you in here, right? And everyone else is telling Miles as a Spider-Man, this is what a Spider-Man is, so you gotta go through this. Your dad has to die. This is what every Spider-Man fan is actually telling Miles. Hey, like, if Miles Morales could jump out of the page, this is why this is a meta modern film. Like, it's talking to us. If Miles Morales could jump out of a page and we're all telling him too, hey, according to your story as Spider-Man,
you have to go through this.
You have to go through this. That's what we're all saying. It's canon. We're all saying that. But what is the film saying? That's the establishment, right? And Miles Morales is trying to, like, break that establishment, because who did it first? Miguel O'Hara. He said he broke the establishment. Right? Just like what I was saying, the Gen X postmodern guys, they fucked around with the format, right? But what happened to one of them? A Zack Snyder, he fucked with the canon. He made Superman's dad get sucked up in a hurricane.
Yeah.
You fucked with the canon, like, then we're going to take your shit. Then bad things happen to you. Bad things happen to Zack Snyder because he fucked with the DC canon.
Yeah.
And the fans chewed his ass out. And they took that shit away from him.
That's like, that expresses like all of our frustrations when we're watching this fucking film.
Yeah.
When I started watching it too, and towards the end, right, we're going to talk about the end obviously as well, because right now he's like defying what he has to go through. The weird thing was, like, because it bothered me so much, I'm trying to rationalize his behavior. But then when they were talking about it, it went back to that moment when he goes, you don't belong here. I was like, well, if he doesn't belong here, why does he have to follow these rules?
Mm-hmm.
And why is that a catalyst for the world ending? He doesn't belong here. He's an anomaly. Maybe he could do what he wants and create his destiny, because you're right. He's not supposed to be Spider-Man.
Right.
So maybe in this reality, which is a reality that's not supposed to exist,
he's Spider-Man anyway.
Yeah.
Why not have his own fucking story?
Exactly.
That's his argument. That's why he says, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to do both. I'm going to save my dad. If I'm not like you, then fuck it. Everything, everywhere, all in one, same thing. Nothing. If it doesn't matter, then fuck it. I love you. Right? If it doesn't matter, then fuck it. I'm going to save my dad. Like, then if we say you're not supposed to be, but you still got to do this established shit, what is that? Contradiction.
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
What the hell is that confusing shit? Right? It's like, no, then give me the space to do my own thing. That I'm going to do my own thing. But what happens when they all fight. They chase him. They want to take him down.
Tooth and nail. Craziest fucking sequence ever too, by the way. Fucking amazing.
All the different Spider-Man are different animation styles, different looks, different pieces, like different eras. Like, it's so fucking great. The fucking spider cat, the T-Rex spider, like
everything. It was so amazing. We can go on and on about that, but saying it in words kind of hard to describe what we witnessed, right?
Gotta see it.
Long story short for this, basically, he says his line, like, I'm going to do my own thing, right? And he ends up going back into the base to figure out how to get back to his world.
Mm-hmm.
So there is this spider machine, right? That basically sends people back to the place that they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right. So Miguel is trying, Miguel. No, not Miguel. Fucking Miles.
Yeah.
Miles is trying to figure out this whole machine, right? He finally gets it going. He gets tossed into the machine. Turns out it's A-okay. he goes back into his world and he's back to where he's supposed to be. He's in his room.
But what do we learn as an audience from watching this film? How every universe has its own characteristics and its own aesthetic. Once you get in there, it looks a little different.
Yeah.
Bit more darker blacks and like more contrast, more purples, more shadows kind of thing. We as an audience, something is wrong.
Yeah.
But we're following the story and they're fucking gaslighting us.
Exactly, right?
I want to point out another thing. Another important character is Peter B. Parker, the sad, depressed, bored Spider-Man of the first film. How Miles inspired this guy to get his shit together, right? By being the good leader that Miles needed. Like he needed a Peter Parker to guide him, right? But he ended up with this schlub. Spider-Man. But they ended up needing each other and helping each other out. And he was expressing to Miles, look, man, I have a kid because of you, because you inspired me to understand I could do something like this, right? And this is the important thing. Like, we saw very poignant leadership within that Spider-Verse between three people. There was Miguel O'Hara, there was Spider-Woman, and then there was Peter B. Parker, right? Yet still, these youngins, Gwen and Miles, reject all of them. And they're still, they want to do their own thing. I think it's a poignant like story, like trying to express how this next generation, Gen Z, they don't want to do what we did.
Yeah.
They don't want to do what you did either. They need to figure out, they need a new method. They're going to figure it out. This is what I mean by a generational film that just really expresses what they're going to do, what the future is going to be like, and what they believe in, right? Because you look at Miles and the way he is, right? He is nurtured by very great parents, right? His mom in the speech too, like, and the way Miles is, his naivety, you might say. Somebody like Kevin Garnett, who had to grind and work hard and grew up in the situation he lived in, finally gets his championship, and then he believes anything is possible because he fucking worked and went to the top, and it's like anything is possible. What's the complaint about Gen Z? They already believe anything is possible. They didn't have to win a championship.
Yeah.
They got all those participation trophies that let them say, see, you can do anything, right? But we're salty about that. The older generation looks at that like, you bitch, you weak ass participation trophy motherfucker, without realizing, what does that actually do for these kids who believe in themselves?
Yeah.
That they can go outside of the box of what we say they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I mean. This is what I learned, about young people through watching this film. I watched Quantumania and I think kids are shitheads,
Yeah.
I watched this film and I'm like, there's hope. Gen Z, we got to believe in them.
It's a very hopeful film.
Yeah.
Right. And that ability, especially like in the story writing, to kind of differentiate between different generations and just like even like parenting styles, right? How none of it's fucking working.
Yeah.
It's very reminiscent of now, right? Sometimes like even for me, like when I tried, to understand like a younger generation, right? And not in a hateful way, but like I'll ask questions. It's hard for me to grasp it, right? Because I don't understand what they're going through. I don't see what they've, like even like on social media, right? There's something missing now that I've reached this age, like I'm in my mid 30s, between me and a 15-year-old kid, right? That 20-year gap is vast.
So huge.
It's cavernous. Like I don't know what the fuck is going on. I don't understand why a kid has to constantly put his emotions out for the public to see. Like sometimes I feel like I'm crazy because I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like what is that? Is it because I was taught different? Is it because what I think is better? Or maybe what they're doing is right? I don't know.
Because they were told that expressing their emotions is healthy. And we were told we're gay.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
We're called the F word. You're sad?
Yeah.
You F word? Like,
I feel like,
shit.
And when you see this too, right? Like the film is reminiscent of that as well. These kids, Gwen and Miles, are here. And these other generations are here. And they just need to meet somewhere in the fucking middle. You know what I mean?
And this film is setting it up so well. We get back to our story, and Gwen. Oh, in the midst of all that chaos, Spider-Punk, as the anarchist he is, anti-establishment is his core, teaches Miles, about the palm technique, like use your whole palm, right? And he loves stirring the pot, he loves talking shit. And we also see him, he's been stealing fucking bits and pieces from Miguel O'Hara's tech. And we see why. It's because he takes off his thing. He says he quits this shit. He's not going to chase Miles. But what he really did was build his own little wristband. And so now his portal looks like fucking magazine cutouts. Yeah. It's like, the aesthetics of this film is, you could watch it all the goddamn day long on mute too. Like, and just see this beautiful picture. So, Miles ends up, and he's running home.
We forgot to talk about something.
Okay.
We forgot to talk about Gwen and her dad.
Oh, right. Because Gwen is chasing, was standing up for Miles, and Miguel O'Hara kicks her out and sends her back home.
Gets rid of her fucking, her watch or her wristband. That kind of keeps her within different dimensions.
The universes, yeah.
Yeah, different universes. This scene, and I can't believe I forgot to mention this part, was fucking amazing to me.
Yeah.
When I was watching it. And this is where I was talking about how they did it so well in the first scene between her father and her, and how different they are, right?
Yeah.
And how they do it with the scenery. They portray emotion and what's happening through the scenery.
Yeah.
As well as the dialogue.
And let's not forget, when he has his gun pointed at her and she reveals her face, the lighting on him gets split in half. One half is red and one half is blue, right? And she's trying to convince him, and you can see his head fucking spinning, and he's red and blue. And then when he like fucking turns all blue, he says, "You have the right to remain silent," right? And so they express like what their thoughts and feelings are. So I looked into it, and then I guess the art directors or the director of the animation, they were saying Gwen's universe is a giant mood ring. So whatever anyone's feeling is the color that's going on awesome. Every single character.
So that's why in those scenes it's like that.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's what I first picked up. I'm like, you don't have to guess shit in this.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And it just only amplifies what's being said and done in the scene, which I really, really appreciated, right? Like everything out there, you could see the room, it's there, right? But it's really just background to express how the person feels.
When they confront each other and they start having their conversation and she starts pouring her heart out, the background melts, right? And even around her father, shit melts and the color fades. And now the color is only expressed through them two as everything's going away. And when he expresses how he quit being a captain, the moment, because he found out his daughter is Spider-Woman, right? This is abstract art. Like the background is just something else. It has nothing to do with where they are. It's like they're in their own universe where they have their fucking moment together in that reconciliation, as if the whole world doesn't fucking matter, right? Which is expressed in Beef too, which we'll get to someday, promise guys.
Yeah.
And then as soon as they go in for the hug, like boom, it goes away. They're back into reality, like in their connection. And then Gwen gets that realization. If he quits being a captain,
he's not going to die.
And so she gets this revelation like, oh, fuck, then I can help Miles. I can help save his father. And then what happens? What's his face? Spider-Punk comes through because he had built his own wristwatch thing, traveling watch, because he stole all of those parts. And then so, in the beginning of the film, she quits her band because it is not something that whether she doesn't feel like she belongs, like that's not the release she was getting out of it. But then what she is doing is getting a band together of just these spider people who stand with her. Like, hey, yeah, like people who stand up with Miles, of spider people who should have their own story, who still believe in doing the right thing. Because before Gwen gets shipped off and kicked out, she says, I thought we were the good people. I thought we were the good guys. And he's like, we are the good guys. Turns around like, we are the good guys. Like, bit antagonistic.
Yeah.
And so music is building up. Miles, Gwen is chasing and trying to get to Miles' apartment. Miguel O'Hara and his crew of people he trusts now, which is not Peter B. Parker, Spider-Woman, and the Scarlet Spider, which is voiced by Lonely Island dude with the nose. Andy Samberg.
Yeah.
That's why he sounds like a surfer douche.
Okay.
But his animation style is dope too. Super 90s. But they post up and they're waiting for Miles to get home, and we're seeing Miles running home too. But we see Gwen Stacy take down Scarlet Spider, when he's in the middle of his monologues. And then she posts up to Miles' bedroom when Miles is there, and his mom catches him in his room, and he finally gets a way to express to his mom, and finally tell her, because he's saying like, I did exactly what you told me. They told me I didn't belong, but I fought them and I beat them all. I'm strong. Now I know I have power, Mom. And so now he has the confidence to tell her, boom, I'm Spider-Man. She has no idea.
Who the fuck is that?
Who is that? Right? He's like, what? Twip, like Spider-Man. She's like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. And then when they go out into the living room, boom, the door opens and it's Uncle Aaron. It's like, wait a sec, Uncle Aaron's dead, right? No. And then he's starting to realize, because he buzzes out for a second, like, oh shit, he's in the wrong universe. And it says, boom, Earth 42. And then both Uncle Aaron and his mom's like, what'd you do to your hair? He's like, did you take your braids out or whatever? And so he's just trying to play along like, oh shit, I'm in the wrong universe. And we're seeing him give his mom like a stack of cash, like, hey, we're family. I have to take care of you guys. So, Uncle Aaron's hustling, doing his thing. He's like, hey, we got to go do some taking up to the roof. And he's texting somebody. The camera shifts and you see that just this very dark intention in Uncle Aaron's face. And boom, Miles gets knocked out. And then in that moment, we're also seeing Gwen walks into his bedroom and she's in the wrong universe. Everybody realizes
they're in the wrong universe.
They're all in the wrong universe.
Because that spider that bit him in that universe is not his universe. Mm-hmm. And that machine only knows to put people to where they're supposed to be. Right. And if he's the Spider-Man, he's supposed to be in 42.
Yes.
And so he's in the wrong place or the right place.
Mm-hmm. But he gets knocked out when he wakes up. He's back at Uncle Aaron's apartment. And who comes out to confront him is the Prowler of this universe. But this Prowler has got Jordan 1s in purple, right? And he's young, takes off his mask. It's fucking Miles. And also, Miles sees the mural that was Uncle Aaron is actually his father, because in this universe, his father was killed. I thought this was an interesting commentary. I felt like it was saying, if Miles Morales loses his father, and he is then under the influence of his uncle, then he will become a gangster, like a bad guy, an antagonist. Which was, I'm not sure what they're going with that, but that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. When I thought about that, I thought it was actually something that's very hopeful. And the reason why I say hopeful is because the idea behind the canon events for Spider-Man is that it's for his own good.
Yeah.
Right. But the canon events in this world, because he's an anomaly, his father dying is actually something bad.
Yes.
So maybe these Spider-Men are fucking wrong. You're wrong. Like, he gets to create his own destiny.
Yeah.
So when I saw that his father died and then he turned out bad, I'm like, oh, this is what he was talking about.
He has to save his father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's different for him. Like, he can create his own destiny. He needs that father figure there, because if not, his father figure is Uncle Aaron, and Uncle Aaron is not a good person.
Right.
Right.
But in the way the story is told, though, that Prowler who is Miles, he became Prowler because he was supposed to become Spider-Man. That spider's total intention was to bite Miles Morales of Earth 42. But because it bit Miles Morales of a universe where he wasn't Spider-Man, ending up with the Peter Parker of his universe dying, that's where I am like a lot of processing and the questions come, because you're like, okay, then if that Miles Earth 42 didn't have the Spider-Man powers, then is that what makes him an antagonist? Because if Miles Morales with the Spider-Man powers father dies, then will it make him antagonistic? Is there a possibility that the Miles Morales we know and that we love will become antagonistic if this Spider-Man
maybe that Spider-Man's evil then.
Mm-hmm.
Oh shit, I didn't even think about that.
That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Who needs a Venom suit?
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
But Gwen Stacy has her proof, like, hey, maybe it doesn't happen that way, in our universes. Maybe we can make our own story. But with all the questions that we have, to be continued.
Yeah.
One of the best cliffhangers I've ever been left on.
Dude, that shit, it was like, damn, this is so good. But I was like, God damn, I want to know so bad.
Yeah.
And they got my ass. They fucking got my ass, man. But then I looked back and I was like, wait, like 2.5 hours passed? Yeah, this movie can't go any longer.
Mm-hmm. I was feeling that too. I was like, because it was kind of spoiled for me, because on Twitter, a super viral post was Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, March 2024. In 10 months.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, so I'm guessing that it's going to be, I thought in my head, they made this movie back to back, just like they did Infinity War Endgame to release it a year later. But apparently what actually happened was, if you remember, Into the Spider-Verse came out in 2018. That's fucking 5 years ago. Apparently this movie was supposed to come out last year.
Oh shit.
But they held it back a whole year because of the pandemic.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So marketing wise, it worked out for them.
Yeah, it would have been terrible. Yeah, it would have been fucking terrible.
Yeah.
But this is like if you haven't watched this, you should, right? If you are a comic book fan, right? And we've seen some pretty bad renditions of comic book takes going into film, right?
Yeah.
But the great thing about comic books going into film that's still a comic is that your wildest imaginations that you saw on a piece of paper really comes to life in this film in the best way fucking possible. And I almost thought to myself after was, do I even want live action versions anymore?
Yeah.
Like, do I?
Because of animation, the possibilities are endless. You can do anything.
Endless.
Avatar 2 proved that you can do any fucking thing. Create an entire fucking universe.
Yeah.
But like, I think another important part was Spot. Because that guy is the big picture antagonist of the next movie as well. And I try to kind of look at it because there's, like I said, this movie is super meta commentary. It's speaking to us, at us, right? So then I was like, but then what the fuck is Spot, right? And then you look at him aesthetically as a design, he's just a white paper sketch, right? And I kept thinking about the lady with the empty blank paper. Like, remember how in those classic Looney Tune cartoons, sometimes they'll break the fourth wall and a giant pencil will come in and change shit or erase shit, right? And I looked at the character Spot himself and why he becomes a greater villain than what he is, than what he started off in the movie as this fucking goofball. And at the end, he's actually intimidating and scary and threatening, and how he became that, right? It's like, and why he keeps saying, you and I are inexplicably linked. You created me and I created you, kind of thing. So then, like, what is Spot? Like a blank piece of paper, right? The sketch, just the bones and the skeleton of something that could be potentially greater on a blank piece of canvas, right? But Miles, and I think that might be a commentary on the let's say the more negative aspects of Gen Z, is someone who doesn't respect him, calls him the villain of the week, right? Even though he's just a blank piece, he's just starting out, doesn't see his potential, right? While believing in himself as like something great and awesome.
There's like a little bit of hypocrisy there.
Yeah, right? That's how I kind of started seeing Spot. And like by the third time I saw it, right? Because like I said, everything else is an analogy and a meta commentary and so much other things. But then I'm starting to see a big picture like way of like seeing somebody like Spot. And if you fucking, shit on something in its conception and you just throw it out, and you take away essentially what it could be. And then you see his design being like, I don't know how to say this, but then I've seen some like psychological art like from schizophrenic people. It's like disturbed mind art. Yeah.
It's
what he
kind of
turns
like,
into.
Like towards the end of the film, right? Like Spot kind of loses his spotlight, right? So you kind of get into the storyline of everyone else but Spot, right? And which is kind of funny because that's essentially why he becomes a fucking villain. So to see that happen again was kind of making me laugh a little bit when I was like thinking about it at night. And then
I think it's smart as fuck.
Yeah.
That's how, it fed into their story.
Yeah. And it was so funny too, like looking at somebody like Spot, it also reminds me of, the kid's like, oh, you're an afterthought, like blah, 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 blah. But he keeps on saying like, no, I created you.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me of just how sometimes a younger generation, they forget like a lot of their stuff and their creativity came because of a generation before you.
Right.
Right. Like the dues that they've paid and they've paved the way. And now that you're doing your cool stuff that they set up for you, you just kind of go, you don't know fucking anything. It's like,
but that's the argument of the other Spider-Man, right? Exactly what you're saying. That's the commentary of what's in our real world.
Yeah.
And then they adapted that into Miguel O'Hara saying exactly what you're saying. Except, I mean, you're pointing it out, but for him, it's like real.
Yeah.
Right, in the characters.
Yeah.
So like, I think like when you read the lines like that, like you'll start seeing the meta commentary and other things like, okay, Batman v Superman, right? Everyone was pissed that Batman was straight up murdering these people. In fact, you could say that Zack Snyder was fucking with the canon by having Batman cause vehicular homicide, and just straight up murder people. But when you saw that backlash from the fans and the internet, everyone's like, Batman doesn't kill, and whatever, right? And then you watch the movie, that's the entire point. That's why Superman had beef with him. He was like, why are you killing people? Right?
Yeah.
That's actually a story like, hey, stop killing. And he was like, what are you talking about? You killed all those people in the city. But I think because of the established minds that we have of who Batman and Superman are, that story couldn't be properly expressed because people already had their mind set up of who they are. Already,
yeah.
Right. And so that's, I'm sure because it's a Marvel property, they weren't trying to make any kind of DC analogy of what actually happened in that whole saga. But that's exactly what they're talking about with the fans' reaction, with canon. Because we all look at Spider-Man, and the reason why we love Spider-Man is because we do kind of see ourselves behind the mask. And through all these new reiterations of Spider-Man being, like, there's even a Korean Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, right? Silkworm.
Oh, yeah.
Cindy Moon. She's a Spider-Man or Spider-Woman, right? Korean American. Dope, right? Because it all stemmed from the idea that we could all be Spider-Man, and they're telling that meta commentary, yet they're pointing out the toxicity of us saying, that's not Spider-Man. Spider-Man doesn't do that. And Miles Morales, the character himself, he's being like, what if I didn't listen to any of you motherfuckers? The Spider-Man in my life, or even you guys who are watching, and we don't know what's going to happen next. Even Mary Jane, Peter B. Parker goes back to his universe. They tuck their baby in, and Mary Jane gives a sports analogy. Say, you're going to have to regroup and re-strategize at halftime. And little did many of us know that it was just going to end there and call it halftime. And that's the kind of cliffhanger I love. It's like we have so many questions, and it's like it's there to wait and they made us fucking starve, and we're all gonna be there next year.
100%.
Yeah. So like this movie, not only do I think should get Best Animated Feature Oscar, I think it should be Best Picture nominated.
Oh, 100%, man.
It's up there.
For me, if anything else, that's the one it should win. Like for me to watch something and say, I need to rewatch it, not only just for the story that I fell in love with and to watch all, the meta messages within the film.
Yeah.
I just want to see all the visual stuff I missed.
You need to enjoy that again. Like you need to sink it in again. That's genius films, man. The shit that makes your ass go back to the fucking theater and pay that price.
It's like why people love fucking Nolan films, right?
The rewatchability. You got to see it again. Tarantino, the rewatchability. You got to see it again.
Start noticing all these little things that are different because once you kind of take in the whole picture, now you could hyper focus on something else.
And this is where I want to fucking praise Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. These guys, I didn't know of them or hear of them until Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, right? And I fucking love that movie, and it's a kid's film, right? And then so I do my geeky nerd shit, IMDb and whatever, and realized they made one of my favorite high school TV shows, Clone High, right?
What's that? I never saw it.
Clone High is about this mad scientist who clones historical figures, and they grow up and he's watching over them. So he's the principal, right? And so all these historical figures are in high school and they're all interacting and like interacting with each other. So it's like JFK is the popular kid and Abraham Lincoln is the nerdy, like loner kid. But Joan of Arc is the girl that he's in love with. Gandhi is the like ADHD's like sidekick friend. And so there's all these people in it. And I remember loving that show and I was like, oh, maybe that's why I love Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Then I'm always on the radar for these guys, right? Then they make 21 and 22 Jump Street. So they go from a kid's film to rated R and they knock it out the fucking park.
Yeah.
And what else? It's also a meta commentary about us and our generation as millennials, right? And then they do the fucking Lego movie.
So good.
So good. Then they produce the sequels and they produce the Lego Batman movie, which those Lego movies are also like multiverse movies. These guys fucking get that shit, Then I think they produced Mitchell vs. Machines, like Last Man on Earth, which was a funny ass show on Fox back in the day. Not back in the day, a few years ago. But then they got hired by Disney to direct the Han Solo movie. They spent millions of dollars on that shit. It was a budget of 100 mil and they were running out of money. I think they spent already 75 million and they were like 75, 80% done filming and they fucking fired them.
For reals?
They fired them, because the writer of Solo was the guy who fucking helped write Empire Strikes Back, and The Return of the Jedi. He's an OG Star Wars dude, right? And Disney Star Wars hired the OG guy to tell us the OG story of Han Solo, but they hired these young, up-and-coming, fresh minds to direct it, to bring it to this next generation to, get to know Han Solo. They didn't like their work in their dailies. They didn't understand their work process. They didn't understand. Because if you see 21, 22 Jump Street, it is a lot of improv, right?
Yeah.
That pissed off that writer. Pissed him off real bad because he's like, fucking OG Star Wars guy. He's like, you're fucking with my script. So Disney fired them and they hired Ron Howard to continue and finish the movie. But you know what they did? They fucking reshot everything.
Oh, God damn.
And they made the guy that they hired as Han Solo take acting classes because they didn't like the job he was doing.
Damn.
Yeah. They fucking just took it over. So these guys who wrote this film sounds like they fucked with the Canon event.
Yeah.
They took that shit away from them. They destroyed it all. This is what I mean about Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. They've experienced exactly what they're talking about in Spider-Man with Star Wars.
They're allowed to portray it really well.
They got fucking fired. But guess what happened? They also wrote and produced Into the Spider-Verse, right? Han Solo came out and bombed, right? Everyone was just like, it's fucking whack. Nobody liked it. They didn't know who the movie was for. They didn't understand the direction of the film. In that very same year, they fucking win the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature for Into the Spider-Verse. And Phil Lord goes up there with the fucking Academy. And because Hollywood knows this story, they got fucking fired from Star Wars. Roaring applause, because look at this guy. He got fired last year and he won an Oscar, right? Like, that's why I fucking love those guys. They make great fucking films. And they killed it with this one again.
And can I just say something, right? And this is like, we grew up, you know, obviously we're kind of young for it, but we still grew up in the, you know, the era of Star Wars fandom.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes crusty people need to understand you're crusty, right? When you had George Lucas come back and he wanted to, which one was it? It was episode 1, was it?
Yeah, Phantom Menace.
No, not episode 1. It was episode 3. It was the one where basically Darth Vader was screaming, "No!"
Oh yeah, episode 3. Yeah.
And that's when George Lucas wanted to come in and he goes, I want to do this. Right? And it was just like, what the fuck is this? Right? It was so corny.
Yeah.
The thing that I think a lot of like Star Wars fans don't realize, right? And this is for me, of somebody who is a Star Wars fan. The reason why Star Wars did really well back in the day wasn't because the script and the acting was amazing. It was because the tech was fucking nuts.
Yes.
It was their avatar.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It was like, dude, what the fuck are we watching? This is insane. I talked to my buddy Ken, and Ken's older than me, right? He's like 10 or 15 years older. He says he remembers when Star Wars came out, right? It was the day that I was like 1 years old or something like that. Or maybe
the last Star Wars came out in 1983.
The first one was 1987. What? No, was it 87?
The first one was like 78.
78. There you go.
Yeah.
Right. I was about to say 87, like somewhere around there. He says he remembers waiting in line for like 5-6 hours to watch it. And then the next day or the next viewing, he waited back in line again to watch it again. That's how mind-blowing Star Wars was and what they were watching. It wasn't because of the fucking great dialogue. It wasn't because of any of that shit.
Yeah.
It was just because technologically it was fucking nuts.
They were in space in 1978.
And so, you know, you have these writers who come in and they go, no, I know the writing. Nobody fucking liked it because of the writing, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Not because of the dialogue or anything else like that. I'm sorry to say, like, it just, they're trying to adapt that and put it into now. It doesn't work.
Do you know the behind the scenes stories about why the prequels are so fucking bad?
No.
So, when George Lucas was making Star Wars, he had a lot of studio interference because he was like, this is his second movie ever, you know? And it was this huge fucking space opera piece, you know? And not only that, like he was married to a woman who was a script doctor. And she worked on his script to make it workable. And all the people on set acting this out, everybody was saying, this is fucking stupid. But they were just following and doing it, right? But you know what? It comes out as a fucking hit, right? And now they got to make a sequel, right? The studio said to George Lucas, you can't direct it. There's a lot of people like forget or don't know because they don't go on IMDb like I do. George Lucas didn't direct, you know, Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi. He wrote it, he produced it, but then Fox got like seasoned directors who knew what they were doing to direct these films, you know, and they got, you know, and he, like I said, he had a script doctor wife to help him fix the script and make sure it worked.
It makes sense.
It made sense. Yeah. And then everything else, you know, was all the effects and all that. Well, fast forward 20 years, Star Wars is just this huge thing, right? It's now 1996 or something. And Fox is like please, George Lucas, will you like make some more Star Wars movies? Like, look at how many years since it's been since any new Star Wars content. It's still fucking huge in American,
pop culture. It's never going to die.
And that's the thing. A studio executive in 1978 to the studio executive in 1996 is two different people, two different mindsets, two other things. That guy in 96 revered George Lucas because in Hollywood, that's what happens. One person gets all the credit, despite all the other people who come in to help fix the film. And these new studio execs looked at George Lucas like he was the god because he created Star Wars and gave him full 100% control of Star Wars. And that's why the prequels are the way they are.
Because that makes so much sense.
100% instead of getting help with somebody to doctor his script, make it work, make it not boring.
Is it true that like was it episode 3, which was the last one that came out, right? Like that was like George Lucas just hands on everything. Like,
yeah.
It was terrible.
Yeah.
It was so bad. And when you say that, that's his original script without the script doctoring.
Without script doctoring, yeah.
Like when fucking... No, everybody, I never knew that you could hear people's eye roll. Like it was like,
yeah,
the fuck was this? Everybody was pissed in that theater.
But Star Wars prequel memes is huge. They have 2 million subs on Reddit.
That's crazy.
It's just prequel memes. Like just
huge.
The rule is Star Wars only in the prequels, and they take all of these stupid ass fucking lines and make memes out of it, and it's endless content because he's corny as fuck, right? And so like that's the kind of model we've lived in, like, and that's what Phil Lord and Christopher Miller is the kind of story they're telling in this meta response. Like they've been victims of the canon and the fandom and everybody telling them what Star Wars is, and they got fucking fired for it.
I do, before we end this podcast, I do want to address this, right? And it's from a few comments of people who listened to our last review for The Last of Us.
Yeah.
And some new people too, who are hardcore gaming fans. And I do want to tell you this is like, they're like, well, you would appreciate it more if you wouldn't like the TV show as much if you watched the game, if you played the game.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's literally the dumbest thing that you could ever fucking say.
Ditto.
That's fucking dumb.
Mm-hmm.
A TV series, film piece, whatever that it is a standalone project in and of itself, right? They're like, it should be exactly like the game. No, it shouldn't.
Yeah.
Because you cannot adapt because they're mixing their personal emotion that they felt in the room playing the game with that anxiety and saying like, I didn't feel like what I felt when I play the game.
Yeah.
No shit. You weren't controlling the character.
Yeah.
Right? And they're like, well, Joel was a badass all the way through till the end. It's like, that is great for you in your little fucking world when you're sitting and playing that game.
Mm-hmm.
But in a person from somebody like me who doesn't know about the game, and I see that, I hate the show. I was like, who the fuck is this guy? Why is he just a badass throughout the whole thing? Why is he doing this?
Yeah.
You don't want any of that? That doesn't make any fucking sense. Like it doesn't. And by the way, the source material is there with the people creating it, and they enjoy the improvements on the film or the TV show better.
Yeah.
So what the fuck are you talking about?
It is like they're saying that they're protecting their virginity card.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, thanks for letting us
It was
know
such
how
a
much of
weird
a
take.
fucking nerd, like geek you are. Like you're the kind of nerd that makes being a nerd uncool. You know?
It wasn't exactly how I felt when I played the game.
Yeah.
If you played the game, you would know how you're supposed to feel when you watch it.
It's like, David, you don't feel the way I feel. It's like, oh my gosh, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I'm like,
shut
wait,
the fuck up, please.
like it doesn't make sense for how enjoyable the TV series was,
Mhm.
right? Because the emotion that you felt playing the game didn't match up to what other people were watching while they were watching the show. How the fuck does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like that doesn't. And what I mean by that, it's not a fair critique, and it doesn't. How is it a critique at all? I
Yeah.
just don't understand. Maybe I'm missing something here because I have seen things that I've been a fan of, that I see adaptation towards film, and they've changed things and it was perfectly fine
Yeah.
because it made more sense.
It's just because it's different. Some people can't handle different. I know I can't many times. When things change up, sometimes I feel some type of way with when things changing up. But then I have to fucking get my shit together and like understand that it might not be that big of a deal, and I accept what the fuck is in front of me for what it is. Kind of
Like,
thing.
you have
It's
to
like
watch
you
it
gotta
with
just
fresh
get over
eyes.
that shit. It's very childish, honestly. It's a
Yeah.
very baby way of talking, honestly.
And this one, and I bring this up because it wraps back to the idea of the canon part. It's like, it has to be this. It has to be
it
this.
has to be that.
If not, it sucks. It has to be this. And it kind of goes back to that. And they're really tackling it really well.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the end of this film left us with a lot of questions, right? Which we can't wait to see, in the next one. And with the way I was seeing it, like I told you everything about the Matrix, right? And, and I was comparing it also to Everything Everywhere All at Once. And with Everything Everywhere All at Once, it's also like the precursor to that movie, I keep thinking is the first Matrix. So if I look at Into the Spider-Verse as Matrix 1, right? Where they establish who the one is and what he is and how awesome he is. And that's somebody we know. That's the hero's journey, right? Which is Into the Spider-Verse 1. It's his Miles' hero journey. They take the classic formula of like Luke Skywalker and like all these people, the hero's journey, but they fucking take the meta-ness like into the next level of that. Like it's still at its core, like the hero's journey. Now, The Matrix 2 said, hey, remember that hero's journey? Boom, flip it on his head, right? And fuck with you and say, like, there are people in control of that story, right? And they use that story to control you, right? And then now I'm looking at this Spider-Man across the Spider-Verse, and it is talking about the establishment control of the story. And remember in Matrix 2, Neo's fight was for his own choice to make his own decision.
Yeah.
Right? And here we go with Miles with that fight in control to make his own decisions. Not saying the next Spider-Man is going to be like Matrix 3, right?
I hope not.
But the core of Matrix 3 is also saying the resolution, right? Being like how they get all this shit together, like every single piece of everybody's story and how they come to a resolution that works for everyone is what I'm so excited for. And I have high hopes and expectation from Lord and Miller to write that story.
It's actually pretty insane how different Into the Spider-Verse is compared to the second reiteration.
Yes.
It's actually substantially different, which I didn't expect. It's like, I'm almost scared to watch the first one and feel like, damn, this is kind of slow.
Nah, I'm going to watch the first one again. I know I'm still going to love the shit out of it. Like, okay, then before we leave, is this the best Spider-Man movie to date?
For me, 100%.
100%. Yeah, me too.
100%.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't even come close. I thought I liked the Tom Holland one.
Mm-hmm.
That's like here.
It's not even. So now I'm like, so I made a list too. And because there are 10 Spider-Man movies now, right? Like in my head, automatically, if this one, Across the Spider-Verse is number 1, number 10 is probably Spider-Man 3.
Oh yeah. That's for everybody though.
Yeah. I feel like number 9 is Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
And then number 8 would be Amazing Spider-Man 1. Number 7 is tough because like the rest of them are pretty decent from here on. But then I might say Spider-Man 1 with Tobey Maguire. That means number 6 would leave us with, I think I would say Far From Home, where he goes to Europe. Because I felt like, just looking at the movie again, it just feels like Disney's European cash grab to be like, hey, Spider-Man's not always in New York.
Yeah.
But and then I would say Spider-Man 2, Tobey Maguire. And then I would say Homecoming. And then No Way Home, Into the Spider-Verse, and then Across the Spider-Verse number 1.
But that gap from 1 to like 3 is big.
It's huge.
It's pretty big. Like
because No Way Home was a multiverse story. It wasn't expressed the way Across the Spider-Verse speaks directly to us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It hits a lot different. And like, I don't think we can ever replace, human actors, because obviously the way that we emote and stuff, I cried in that when I watched Aunt May die, right? It was pretty fucking amazing.
Yeah.
But I think like the possibilities of what you can do with animation when it comes to a comic book is unmatched.
Yeah. It's
when
endless.
you do it this way.
Yeah.
Well, guys, that wraps up this episode of the Genius Brain Podcast. I hope you enjoyed that review. We will get to that beef review. There's so much shit that came out.
It's just too heavy, man. It hurts to watch.
It's long too. So many episodes. That's going to be a breakdown.
Yeah.
So you can catch Genius Brain every Sundays at 12 p.m. and you can catch Ed at Ed Park VP and Bible Study at Momo's. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.